Let's go over a few ways to reference game objects. There are several ways to do so. I'm going to go over the ways that I find to be the best. We're going to start off with serialized references. This is by far the fastest. If your objects are both in the scene already, use a serialized reference. There's no reason not to. It's super quick, super simple. All you need is either a public field or a private or internal field marked with serialized field. All public fields will be serialized by default. We're just going to focus on the private field here. So what you need to do, once you've got those fields, you'll see these over here. All you need to do is drag the object you want to reference into the field. So we're just referencing our text object here that will display the game object's name. So as you can see here, if the reference is missing, it won't be, but in case it is, it would debug the reference is missing. If it is not missing, it will print the object and its name, or the serialized object's name, and then it will put the game object's name on the text field. We just hit play, bam, serialized reference. Super simple, super quick. The next reference type we're going to be using is the singleton. The singleton is a design pattern that ensures there is a single instance of an object with a public static reference to it. So I've got my object that's going to reference the singleton, and then I've put a singleton script on the text object with a serialized reference to the text there. Here we've got the actual singleton. Here is the public static singleton object instance. This is how we will be accessing the singleton. Of course, our serialized reference. And this is how we set up a very basic singleton. So on awake, if the instance is null, it will set the instance to itself. Otherwise, if the instance is not null and it is not this, it will destroy itself. We've also got a public method here that takes a string parameter and will set the text object's text. Here is where we're referencing our singleton on the object that is being spawned. So super simple, you just reference it with its class name, .instance, and then here's the method, and we're just passing in the game object's name. As you can see, there's nothing else on this object, so we're just gonna hit play, and there it is, singleton reference. Super quick, but not great for everything. Use these sparingly, if at all. The next method of reference we will be using will be dependency injection. Now, this is a very basic form of dependency injection. All we're going to do is inject a reference to our text object into a newly instantiated prefab. So we've got our spawner here. It's just a button that will call a method on itself. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. So the spawn object, what it will do is it will instantiate a copy of our prefab that has serialized reference here. The text object is also a serialized reference. So after it instantiates a new object, it will get the component that we'll be using here. Now you can instantiate and return the reference to the component, but I did this just for clarity. And then it will get the injected text reference field and assign the reference to the text object. After that, it will call the validate reference method. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So here is basically the same as the serialized reference. In fact, I've just copied and pasted that. It will do the exact same thing. So we've got our public TMP text, which will be assigned when this is spawned, and then it's just going to print the name of that object and set the name, or set its name as the text on the text object. So let's go ahead and take a look. So as you can see, we've hit play. The object is not in the scene yet, but we hit spawn object, and there it is. It is now spawned, and it was able to successfully set its name to the text object. So the last thing we'll touch on here is how to pass information along without a direct reference. A lot of the time, you won't actually need a direct reference to something. For example, your UI. According to proper encapsulation principles, your UI should not have access to your player. There's no reason it would need direct access to the player. So normally, you would want to use something like an event to update the UI. So what we're going to do is we're going to spawn our events example object here. It's got the events example script on it. This button here just spawns the object, does nothing else at all. So our events example component has a public static event of type action that takes a string parameter called onObjectStart. Now it's static because we don't want a direct reference to the object. We just want a reference to the event. So we're going to invoke the event if it is not null. That's what the question mark here is for. It's a null conditional operator. We're going to invoke the event and pass the game object's name as the parameter. So let's take a look at our singleton object again. So down here, we have our singleton object subscribing to the event. So it's calling the event on the class itself because it is static rather than needing a object reference. And it is adding the setText method here to the event. So when the event is invoked, it will call the setText method using the text parameter here. And then it will just set the text object's text to the information we pass, and that was, of course, the game object's name. So as you can see here, I'm adding and also subtracting the event. So whenever you subscribe to an event, by convention, you should also be unsubscribing to the event somewhere. You don't want event listeners just hanging around in the scene when unnecessary. So we've got our onEnable and onDisable methods that are called automatically by Unity. So it will subscribe to the event when this object is enabled and then unsubscribe when it is disabled. So let's go ahead and take a look at how that works. So we hit play. As you can see, no object is spawned yet, but we're going to hit spawn object. And there is our events example object, and it was able to successfully set its name as the text. Super simple. As with all of these methods, they're all super easy, and they are all so much better than any of the find or find object with tag or any of those methods. Those are all slow. They all have to traverse the hierarchy. Try not to use them if possible. These are all great methods here on how to reference a game object. If you have any suggestions or for other methods you prefer, or if you have any suggestions for future videos, go ahead and drop a comment. Let me know. I will see what can be done.